July 7, 1944, 2100 hours. In the next 72 hours, an entire city will be erased from the face of the earth. Not by mistake, by design. In the dusty trenches outside Galmanche, the men of the North Shore and the Queen's Own Rifles are waiting in the shadow of a mechanical god. The air is humid, heavy with the scent of diesel and the metallic taste of impending violence. Then the trembling begins, not in the earth, but in the air itself. Above them, a wall of 467 RAF bombers slides across the setting sun, a silver shroud for the medieval heart of Normandy. The roar of over 1,000 Merlin engines is so massive it liquefies the atmosphere. This is not a battle. This is a tectonic shift in the nature of warfare. Steel replaces the sky, a grid of aluminum executing a civilization from 30,000 feet. Strategically, Charnwood is the direct kinetic payoff of Operation Windsor. Without the blinding of the German sensors on the Carpiquet airfield, this massive air fleet would have been decimated by the concentrated flat grid of the 12th SS. Montgomery is now deploying the ultimate industrial hammer, 2,300 tons of medium-capacity bombs. This decision marks a desperate admission of an operational deadlock. Conventional field artillery has fundamentally failed to saturate the deeply entrenched defense system of the 12th SS Panzer Division. The Caen system has become a strategic anomaly that refuses to break. Montgomery is no longer fighting for individual hedgerows or tactical high ground. He is attempting to physically cut the entire Caen node out of the Western Front's fabric through sheer mass. The total destruction of the city is not collateral damage. It is the calculated price for the operational freedom of General Bradley's forces in the West. This is the birth of urban interdiction on a continental scale. The sacrifice of a historic urban center to unlock a strategic stalemate that has paralyzed the Allied advance for over a month. The Earth ceases to be solid. It becomes a fluid mass of vibrating limestone and fire. Individual impacts of 1,000-pounders merge into a permanent, hammering inferno that defies human perception. In a deep cellar beneath Rue Saint-Jean, a nameless witness cowers in a space that used to be a home. He does not count the explosions. He counts the millimeters of fine white lime dust accumulating on his hands. Every tremor shifts the very statics of the world above him. Houses from the 11th century are pulverized into gray lung filler in a matter of seconds. Massive stone blocks are tossed like paper through the vacuum of the blast waves. Then, a silence so heavy it physically hurts the ears. The smell of sulfur, burnt limestone, and old, centuries-dry wood settles like a shroud over the ruins. Caen is no longer a city. It is a forensic desert of ash. At this precise moment, the systemic failure of the RAF's Pathfinder units reveals itself with brutal clarity.
This pin is out of alignment. Recalibrate it. We need precision. Adjusting now.
The target markers, the phosphorus sky markers, drifted fatally in the evening wind. Instead of hitting the German trench lines and anti-tank screens on the northern outskirts, 2,300 tons of high explosives plummeted directly into the medieval center of the city. The result is an operational paradox of Allied design. 10-meter-high walls of debris now pile up in the narrow streets, sealing off every logistical artery and arterial road. Allied mobility is effectively executed by its own bombardment. The pioneers of the Royal Engineers stare at a landscape that no map can navigate. The ballistics of the bombs turned the historic limestone architecture into a secondary weapon of mass obstruction. No Sherman of the Fort Garry Horse can overcome these artificial mountain ranges without heavy engineering support that simply does not exist at the front. The geometry of rubble becomes Kurt Meyer's new, unforeseen defensive architecture. What was intended as a path for the armor has become a fortress of Allied creation, forcing the infantry into a war of attrition they were never supposed to fight. July 8th, dawn. The men of the Highland Light Infantry and the North Shore advance through a biting yellow haze that tastes of sulfur and decay. In the suburbs of Buren and Authie, the industrial tearing of MG-42 fire erupts from undetected cellar holes. There is no longer a front line here, only individual piles of stone that spit death. A Canadian platoon leader screams orders that are instantly swallowed by the roar of 88mm shells.
Hold fire! Wait for my signal!
Behind them, the Shermans of the Fort Garry Horse inch through the rubble, their tracks clattering hollowly against shattered brick. Commander sees only shadows. He is blind in a world of dust. The 75mm barrel lowers. A dry mechanical bark, a sniper's nest in a chimney evaporates. Blood is the only currency accepted in these ruins. This is the emergence of the Canadian anomaly. Because the aerial bombardment missed the German defensive lines on the outskirts, the Canadian infantry must now finish the work of the bombers on the ground, with the bayonet, the grenade, and the flamethrower. In the assault on Buren alone, the North Shore Regiment loses nearly half its combat strength in a single afternoon. Contrary to all established armored doctrine, the Shermans are repurposed as close support tanks. In the ruins of Buren, Authie, and Grouchy, a forensic deconstruction of the German resistance takes place. The 12th SS uses the rubble as a force multiplier that neutralizes the Allies' massive technological superiority. It is a war of attrition on a microscopic level, tearing the 2nd Canadian Corps' original schedule to pieces. The men who survived the beaches now find themselves in a Stalingrad of Normandy. There is no room for maneuver, only for the mechanical, yard-by-yard exchange of human lives for piles of pulverized stone. The hinge of Caen is not moving. It is being ground down. Montgomery in his mobile headquarters at Cruelly. The dust of the front lies like a fine gray layer on the tactical maps made of parchment. His gaze is not fixed on the burning ruins of the cathedral. It wanders west towards St. Lo. 3,800 casualties are reported in the first 48 hours of Charnwood. In the cool, clinical silence of his staff car, Montgomery does not calculate in individual fates or the grief of families. He calculates in the depletion rates of panzer divisions and the exhaustion of the German reserves. He hears the distant, unceasing echo of the fighting for the Abbaye d'Ardennes, while he marks the positions of the U.S. First Army with a red pencil. Every German Panther fighting in the ruins of Caen is a ghost that will not appear on General Bradley's front to the west. The hinge is under a mechanical tension that is screaming toward the breaking point. This is the surgical, cold-blooded core of strategic binding. Charnwood is the necessary, bloody sacrificial lamb for the success of Operation Cobra. The German High Command is suffering from a fatal systemic error. They interpret the massive concentration of air power as the definitive harbinger of the main Allied breakout toward Paris. Montgomery intentionally pumps his infantry into the industrial meat grinder to cement the German elite reserves in place. The blood of the North Shore is the currency with which Bradley's breakout corridor is purchased. Without the friction and the binding effect of Charnwood, there would be no Cobra. The total collapse of the German front in Normandy is being engineered in the ashes of Caen. July 9th, 11 o'clock hours. The men of the Queen's Own Rifles reach the north bank of the Orne. The river is a graveyard of blown steel girders. The historic bridges are charred skeletons. From the cellars crawl figures who no longer possess the capacity for tears, survivors of a city that was sacrificed for a map. He is counting his remaining Panthers. He is preserving the core of his system while the city dies around him. Caen is liberated, and Caen is extinguished. Operation Charnwood ends as a brutal operative amputation. Standartenführer Kurt Meyer made a decision here that systemically undermined Hitler's irrational stand-fast order. He ordered the tactical withdrawal across the river before his division could be completely encircled. He saved the remains of the German defensive system by sacrificing the space to preserve the substance. The city of Caen is now a two-part system, separated by the impassable barrier of the Orne. The forensic balance is staggering. 3,800 casualties in 72 hours. The battle proves that ground can be won through industrial power, but the enemy's will to fight remains an unquantifiable variable. The amputation of the city was necessary, but the infection of the deadlock remains in the south. The hinge has moved, but it has not broken. Operation Windsor blinded the eye. Operation Charnwood smashed the node. But the strategic center of gravity for all of Normandy remains untouched by these industrial blows. Epsom failed to outflank. Windsor secured the flank. Charnwood took the ruins. All these operations remain tactical patchwork as long as the enemy holds the roof of Normandy. German artillery on the southern heights can still rake every square meter of the city with deadly precision. The Allied system recognizes the bitter truth. You cannot hold Caen without possessing the Massif to the southwest. Caen burns as a black cautionary monument on the horizon. Tactical finesse is dead. The era of industrial material battles has begun. Where Epsom ended in blood and failure, the next wave will now break. The stakes are doubled. Total exhaustion is the new norm of the war. Next episode, Operation Jupiter. The return to the green hell of Hill 112.